and 10 locations. And so I grew that in 18 months, this company called Creative Learning Workshop. And we had a wonderful run while I'm still have an obligation of winding down a law practice. And during the phase of what really got me to jump wasn't necessarily my mental retardation business, but a dear friend of mine.
Welcome to the Ed O'Keefe Show. Transform your mind, accelerate your business, energize your body, and inspire the world. Now here is your host, Ed O'Keefe.
Hey, it's Ed O'Keefe, and welcome once again to the Ed O'Keefe Show. Today I have a very special guest, one of my great friends, Mr. Vinnie Fisher. In this episode, we will dive deep to discuss scaling a business rapidly with purpose. Vinnie's a good friend of mine, and he is the CEO and founder of Fully Accountable as well as Total CEO. But in the past 9 or 10 years, Vinnie's grown many companies from zero to multiple millions, and even one business did over 120 million in 1 year. We go into that story, my own stories, and the lessons of growth that can either work for you or against you if not managed correctly. Also, one quick note, Vinnie will be speaking at my Time Collapsing Mega Conference coming up this October 11th, 12th, and 13th in Nashville with a jam-packed lineup. Jesse Itzler, my great friend Jeff Usner, who does 50,000 leads a day. Jesse, by the way, I assume everybody knows who he is. Jesse sold Marquis Jets, that's Marquis Jets, to Warren Buffett's company NetJets, and has been actively involved with a few other famous brands like Zico coconut water and selling that to Coca-Cola, as well as some other cool things that are coming out right now behind the scenes, and as well as his book, Living with a Seal. So those are just a couple guys, Mr. Roland Frazier, who I've had on the show before, and yeah, it's going to be amazing. I have Navy SEALs there who are entrepreneurs who will be speaking as well as emceeing. I have my good buddy who's a former Delta Force operator who is in a tech startup right now who will be there speaking and also just attending. And so there will be a ton of people there. Our goal is 150 to create a nice private, intimate environment so you get personal attention. And that's it. Without further ado, let's get to the interview. Mr. Vinnie Fisher.
How are you today, Vinnie?
Doing great, Ed. Thanks, buddy.
We are so stoked to have you on the Ed O'Keefe Show and to talk about all the amazing things that you have going on. I mean, you have a lot going on right now, but it's all so positive, and I can't wait to talk about all of it, your book, your seminars, your a couple of your new companies. And before we dive into all of that, why don't you give everybody your little bit of your background, a little 30-second, who's Vinnie Fisher?
Yeah, so Vinnie Fisher is the CEO of a company called fullyaccountable.com. I'm a lawyer. I'm a corporate and tax lawyer by trade. I, for years, had a private practice, broke out into the marketing world in the early to mid-2000s, and have been a serial entrepreneur ever since, building and growing companies. I have once again gone back to the service world, and I've all of the things we're going to talk about today, and any time you talk to me, is about the passion of life where I am, and it's all centered on this this mission I have to come alongside small business owners to help them be the most successful they possibly can be.
I find it funny that you introduce yourself as a lawyer as like the first thing.
Well, it's good to let people know like who I am and what I do, right? Like I don't know. It's like it's funny to put it out there, and so yeah.
Yeah, you probably are one of the few lawyers who use passion in the first sentence of their entire thing. But let's actually address that really quick. So, because your background actually was kind of your training ground that led you to entrepreneurship, where you decided at one point that you were going to go out on your own. And, and I know you, and you're a guy of service and trying to help as many people as possible. And in doing, like, give everybody kind of your previous life before you delve into entrepreneurism and how that bridged over. Do you mind doing that real quick?
Yeah, no, that's good. So, you mean from my legal background?
Yeah, like what were you doing as a lawyer? And
yeah, so I actually early on, I you don't really develop a discipline in law school. You come out and I had the privilege of joining a big fancy law firm and they well trained under some guys, and I had a tax kind of bend to me. So I was in the large estate and corporate practice, and early on I had a mentor who kind of like took me under his wing and said, you really are pretty good at helping the small business owner. Have you ever thought about kind of heading in that direction? I'm like, is that what you want me to work on? I'll work on it. And so I literally started working with small business owners, like helping them with employment agreements, with like employee disputes. How do you hire somebody? What decisions we're going to make on contracts, buying power decisions. So before long, within a couple of years, I literally was running clients' businesses. They would call me all day long to help them make operational decisions in their business. And I remember one day being like, this is kind of funny. I'm running like 15 different companies all day long by just quickly ad hoc answering questions. And I was on like 8 or 9 different retainers for just answering questions. And it was I had this aha moment where I'm like, why am I doing this for everybody else and not myself? And I loved it. I actually did not leave the active practice of law for a bad reason, like my license wasn't taken from me or something like that. I really enjoy the law. I really loved having clients, and I got such an amazing training ground on not only contractual issues. I literally learned and understood how to manage a team of employees through the trial of hard knocks of doing it right and wrong for a whole bunch of clients. And so that really got me very well prepped to actually growing and managing my own teams in companies. And it's so inherent and built within everything I do now, but it all came back from how my law practice grew.
Yeah, and what's funny about that is on that note, it's a lot of business owners when they start out, they're either very product orientated, where they come from I have the best product, or I'm creating this because I'm passionate about it, or they come at it very marketing driven. And there's that kind of gap where knowing the operational to legal side is one of those things that so many of us ignore. And kind of like hope you don't have to deal with as you grow your business and scale it. So that's pretty cool. So you made the switch over, though, you had that aha moment. So let's just go a little deeper there.
Yeah.
When did that happen? How did it happen? And how old were you, by the way, when this happened?
So, I was, in my early 30s, I've already had a pretty successful law practice, and I was pretty actively engaged in some big level corporate stuff. Like I was a general counsel or assistant general counsel to some big named local companies here in the greater Cleveland area. And I started having those feelings. I would walk into a boardroom and I was not being asked quickly to just advise on risk. I was literally negotiating deal points with opposing parties, and the counsel didn't know how to do the math. Well, I just started, during that process, I actually did a business deal with one of my clients, and we opened up a mental retardation company after we had the law changed. And I literally created and incubated the entire idea from walking out of a meeting. And I was, what was that? I was 33 years old when I kind of incubated that idea, 34 years old when I incubated that idea. And so 10 years ago is really when all of that started.
Wow, that's really cool. Very, very cool. Cool. So you jumped out into the entrepreneurial space. How did it go at first? Did it take off? Did you guys struggle a little bit?
That particular business was, my law practice was thriving. So that would still be running today, and it's probably not things to get into at this moment, but our law practice wound down because I ultimately ended up breaking up with my law partner, and we had some classic disappointments happen in that business. It would probably still be running today, but for that. My first venture out was actually profitable and successful. It really was something else, though, too. It was one of the hardest times in my life, because I had still this obligation of managing, clients. You have ethical obligations. You stand before the Supreme Court of your state and you make certain statements and obligations to your clients. So even though I had made an active decision to wind down a law practice, that doesn't, I didn't wake up like you and I might as an entrepreneur today and say, I'm out, and do something else. I literally had in some cases, still today, an obligation of files that I hold 10 years later. But I, right along the way, had about an 18-month tail of kind of seeing through obligations where I was the head kind of either fiduciary or person involved. So that was really hard, and I blew up a business that still exists today because we sold it and had a large employee base and 10 locations. And so I grew that in 18 months, this company called Creative Learning Workshop, and we had a wonderful run while I'm still have an obligation of winding down a law practice. And during the phase of what really got me to jump wasn't necessarily my mental retardation business, but a dear friend of mine, Mark Jenny, and I, he was a client first, and then he asked me to go into business with him. So at this exact moment, while I have this great little CLW running, I have a law firm that's winding down, that's doing very well in revenue, that I decide that because of our partnership, it has to head in another direction. We launch a publishing business that I was overextended. And so while it was my first successful one, I got bit by the I can do everything bug. And I probably worked a solid 18 hours a day, got very little sleep, was completely strung out. And by all intents and purposes to the world, I looked like a rock star.
Meaning everyone around you was like, wow, he's killing it? Is that what you mean by looking like a rock?
Like, look at this guy. I wish I could be him. And I'm like one more stressful moment away from falling over at a party.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Like, my kids literally just walked by me as I'm walking, as we're doing this interview, and because they're just getting home from school. And it's funny, we'll talk about, real rich and perceived rich. But I consider that feeling awesome and just having the life, regardless, and I get to talk to you. So you hit on a lot of points, man. I think let's go a little deeper on the, what was it like being completely overextended, killing it from a business perspective, but also, you kind of wake up in a success you didn't really know. It kind of traps you in some ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was completely trapped into the success because, I think back to that, and it's actually something that I'm very, very aware of, and it's not just this conversation bringing those emotions back, because I'm thankful and very aware of it, because I actually think a lot of business owners go through this. We have an idea or a product or a dream, and we set out to go do it. And we're good marketers, so we convince someone to buy our version of a product, and we start getting sales or service. People want our time and attention, and they're willing to pay us for it. Well, if you like all that, and I think naturally, that's what we're bent towards, then what you don't do is say no. And so Since you don't say no, you start saying yes to everything. And so before you know it, I was good at people and employment, but I wasn't really good at delegation or process. And so I was really great at getting awesome people to join my team, and I still did everything because I thought I was the best at it. And so it was this really, really unusual thing that I did is every time we'd start something, I would trap myself into being the core key player in it. And I remember, like, literally one day, Mark is like, dude, you're great, but why do you have to be at the center of everything? And I was like, oh my gosh. And I couldn't describe the emotion at the time that I like felt like this sense of if I wasn't doing it, I wasn't like helping out the best. And if I was doing it, then I didn't have any more capacity to do it. It was a very tough time for me.
Well, yeah, and in fairness too, by being a entrepreneur, founder, creator, plus you have the highly educated left brain part of you that came with it. The truth of the matter is we solve problems better than most people do. That's why you feel obligated to be there. But as you scaled, you had to move it. Where like Mark was so right-brained that he's so happy to be left alone, to create cool stuff. So yeah, but it's a trap we all fall into. But so that's pretty cool stuff. So I want to talk because even your success then prepped you for what you're doing now for business owners and the book you're writing. And so let's segue into how you transitioned out of that. You're doing a few things. I want to talk about transitioning a little bit because one pattern in your life that I noticed, and you brought it up earlier on when you talked about how difficult it was to move from this thing that you literally have a tail that you are legally obligated to support. But I think a lot of us, especially in this day and age where once you figure out how to start a business and how to use the media, we're inundated with new ways of doing things all the time, that one of the traps or challenges is like, wow, I got to A, but A really isn't where I want to be. So we start moving and transitioning to B. And you and I have talked about this, about how pivoting is a really mature thing, even though it could be looked down upon. Do you mind if we just kind of explore this transitioning from like one idea to the next and how you mentally approach that?
It's probably evolved for me, but like looking at it now, I think the perspective is probably the clearest or cleanest for me. And so this idea that you kind of anchored in my head in this question was pivoting and how I look to move from one thing to another. And I'd say now that I'm older and people tease me for being the grandpa, I look at it from a standpoint of, fulfillment. Am I doing something that really makes me feel like I'm offering a bunch of value to someone else? And then, immediately the reaction is, oh, that's the sellout answer. We all are in this to make money. Come on, tell us something we really want to hear. And then I get slightly, okay, great. You want to have a real conversation? Then let's talk about the real issue. And sometimes that I do want to do things that make me feel the best. And I have to be honest with myself, like, when do I feel the best? Do I feel the best when a friend of mine calls me up and says, hey, I heard that idea, I went with it, I rolled with it, and thanks, man, I did it. And does someone willing to pay me for that, or do I even want to be paid for it? So what I started getting to is, you can have these great things that you're passionate about, but if you can't get anyone to buy it, and you can't make it a business, then it's time to pivot into something else. So I'll be like giving friends and myself advice, and someone's struggling to get a business moving. And I say, has it ever occurred to you that you just can't make that business work? And so sometimes pivoting is straight up, you thought you had this great idea, no one wants it. Sometimes pivoting is where I've come into my life. I ran some pretty successful businesses and woke up one day, I was running a hosting company, woke up one day, I didn't want to run it anymore. And literally that business went away because I lost the desire to run it, not because it wasn't a good idea or we had a heck of a lot of customers. But I woke up one day and in some respects, recklessly at the time, didn't want to do it anymore. And I was quick to jump off of it because I wanted to do something else. And looking back at that, I should have possibly handled my desire to move on in a different way. But looking at today, how I would have handled that was I would have found a very good replacement for me as opposed to the way we've replaced me, and which ultimately led to the demise of the company. And so pivoting is a very, very complex question. It has to start with, Ed, are you actually in a business where people want to buy stuff from you? So, for example, if we opened up Fully Accountable, and I think it's a great idea to try to find this core service for small businesses, but nobody is signing up, or only you and 3 other people are signing up. Do I keep driving it deep is because I can't get the messaging right? Or do I think about that I maybe opened up a business that isn't sustainable because no one wants to pay for its service? So those are tough questions I don't think people are willing to ask themselves sometimes.
Very much so. And I think also, too, we get hammered into this concept of they look at it as quitting and versus just it was a test, it was an experiment, it didn't work,
Right.
There's a million people that are still in multi-level marketing today who haven't made $1, still won't make $1 tomorrow, and but they're very motivated, they're very positive, but their strategy may be flawed, and that's not just that business, but a lot of businesses are might just be the wrong offer, could be a million things. And so that's a great.
Well, there's another side, Ed. There's another side to pivoting that, maybe I just avoided in the first part of this. And it's actually the dangerous side of pivoting. It's the side of that, I've been guilty of multiple times, and, entrepreneurs have to be very careful of this. And it's pivoting too quickly because it's easier to go start something new than fix the parts that you broke building what you have in front of you. And so sometimes I've pivoted because it was just darn more fun to go start something new than to fix the parts I trapped myself into whatever I built. And so I look at that as giving up too quickly, or as, getting off where you might have some critical momentum, and you only did it because, I think we hear people say grass is greener or shiny coin. I think it's actually much deeper than that. I think it's this issue of we love as entrepreneurs to go create stuff, and we aren't fix-up specialists. We're startup specialists. And so we quickly run to go start something instead of fix what's in front of us.
Right. Like, actually, it's funny you mention that, because if you look at the book, I think it's like the 6-month turnaround. Mm-hmm. It's a great book. The chapter, it's kind of like a cookbook where you choose where you're at and you go there. But one of the first things he says, like in chapter 1, is look at everything you're doing and stop doing like 90% of it, because that's what's driving your overhead up and your COGS up, and usually you need a turnaround because you don't have any profit or your margins are horrible. And but, you and I don't know if I want to go here too much on this, but why not?
Yeah.
The preceding problem on some of that is, let's assume you have your market correct, you have a good offer, you're growing a business. What's your vision and goal with the business? Do I want to have 3 employees and on Fridays and every month pull cash out? Or do I want to scale this thing? And have you found that a lot of guys who get caught in that trap of like, I don't like my life anymore, or I don't like this business anymore, it's because their skill set was when they were from 0 to 3 employees, and their gross revenue might have been 0 to 3 million to 5 million. And I know those numbers are all
yeah,
kind of
it's fine. Yep.
Can move. But what have you seen? I mean, is that one cause of a lot of these guys?
Yeah, I think when we start out, I think it's literally moving and even pivoting within the business. I think when we start something, guys who start, they had a good idea. So I had a good idea to start Fully Accountable. Well, once it reached a run rate of a 7-figure business, it's a different company. It's no longer me and Chris and 2 guys. It's a staff of 20, and it's growing to be like it's got visions of being an 8-figure business. Well, what happened was I either and the natural evolution for that business and every other one is you start taking on more roles. In the beginning of a small business, there's 3 of you, right? And then you each have to wear 3 or 4 hats. Well, I have no problem with that until you no longer can wear a hat because of just time obligation. Well, before you know it, a business is so busy, and you as the creator or owner are in spots because you haven't invested well into removing yourself out of certain positions that you actually get miserable of a size of a business where you're almost like in a no man's land. You don't have enough money to go bring in other people, but you haven't invested in well to remove yourself out of parts of it. So the question is, what do you do with that? And so instead of dealing with it, a lot of people shut down and run from it because they're just miserable. There's a reason why that sounds hard to be in no man's land, because it's a tough place to be. It's a place where no man wants to be. And I think that's kind of what has happened to me in the past. Is I started a business, got it to a certain point, and then I didn't know what to do to break through to the next point. And so I've had to mature in my life to either invest in getting the right people around me who take over aspects of it, even to the point of taking me out of it. If I want to see that going concern keep going. But I think that's what happens. We get this mindset where we start something and it grew exactly where we wanted it to. And then that next season or version of that business needs to be something else. And we didn't clear the deck in our mind and start managing the second version of the company. We're still managing the first version of it.
Right. Very good. Very good. So why don't we dive into fully accountable? Like, what is fully accountable? We've been talking about fully accountable.
Yeah.
What's a nice segue into what are you doing now? What's your focus at?
Yeah, so fully accountable is a back office accounting solution. We have identified a hole in the marketplace where the small accounting department, the business owner, grows a business and they hire nice Mary to be their bookkeeper, and then it starts getting more complicated, and they go out and they hire an external CPA to do their taxes. And then more responsibilities are placed on either the outside accountant or Mary, the bookkeeper. And there's this tension in a small business where the owner is not able to get the numbers. Well, large accounting, mid-sized companies and above have fixed this. They have protocol, key performance indicators, all this wonderful stuff that if you're willing to write the check, you get all the attention in the world. The small business doesn't have that attention. And so we developed a solution where we can have the bookkeeper, staff accountant, and CFO available at the price of the bookkeeper for a small business. And so our most popular service is it's a little trademark of ours called Your Own CFO, where it's probably the most popular thing that our small business owners want, where they cannot afford, or at least they have not invested in or found the right person to invest in to be their full-time CFO. But what we've learned is that they only need their own CFO for 3 to 5 hours a month. And so we've offered and created a service in a way that allows small business owners to have just that.
Yeah, and I think that what's great about that and was the question you always have, and when I've grown every business that I've grown, you hit a certain point, I don't know what dollar amount it might be, let's say $3 million, $4 million, where your existing bookkeeper just cannot give you advice you need. But you're not at a place where you want to go out and pay $125K to $250,000 to get in a superpower CFO, because what are they going to do all day for you?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that number starts a lot lower, Ed. We've found that, any business, once it starts making north of $500,000 annually in revenue, has some issues. And here's what we do. We have a bookkeeper, and we try to have her do more, but we know that she's a nice lady that can make sure things are inputted rightfully or wrongfully so, or we go hire a bookkeeping service that does it, and they're just inputting things for us. And then at best, maybe we're cashing checks or writing checks. It's a very basic function. And so then everything from there to our accountant is a void that either the owner or the accountant tries to cover. And the kind of do-it-yourself accountant is wonderfully competent at probably filing tax returns and meeting with you to talk about your annual plans. But if you think about the technology today, does not really, we should not have, the small business should have not been left behind when the mid-size and large companies have taken advantage of this. The idea that a profit and loss statement is a historical document that we shouldn't be making critical decisions on. It's 45 days old once you see it. And at that point, you're not making real decisions. And so, mid-sized businesses, large companies have taken full advantage of because they've paid for the resources. And a small business has been unable to do that. And so the more that an owner can get control of weekly and daily type access to their own business, they become more equipped to make better decisions. And so we say around here that we give you more time, control, and resources to make better decisions in your business. And so it's as simple as allowing our clients to have access to the numbers and no longer make emotional decisions, but just make data-driven decisions.
Well, and I think what you're bringing up too is key. Is that, like, my first 12 years of an entrepreneur, I was looking in the rearview mirror and trying to fix tomorrow what we screwed up on 45 days ago.
Right.
It's true, yeah. And even if and you're absolutely right on the. I mean, I would say the moment you have a conversion funnel that's generating sales, you need to really get control of your numbers and have that weekly rhythm and pulse as well. So,
well, I got a great story for you. I was walking up on stage to receive a Marketer of the Year award, and they were bragging about our numbers. And I leaned over to my partner and said, "Wouldn't they love to know when we were half the size of revenue, we were more profitable?"
Yeah, isn't that a punch in the gut?
And so we didn't know that we were running at this like negative 5% because we were blind on the data. I was so consumed with growing the gross revenue, I never paid attention to like some of the bottom line issues. And it was the school of hard knocks to realize that, we have data available to us. And you know what? We see a need, and we took full view of it and have stepped into a spot that the large accounting firms and larger practices have been unable to service properly.
So do you talk about these things in the book you're writing now? Because I'm going to ask you a couple specific questions.
Yes. Yep. So the book, The Owner's Mindset, the whole book is designed off of the 6 critical areas to run your company. So it starts out with the owner, the mindset of a vision of what type of business you have. It starts with your product and your service, which is the second piece. Then naturally most owners are already either product creators and or the sales and marketing person. So you have that natural bent, which is the third piece of your business. Then the next one as you grow is the people. How do you have the skills to, have you worked on kind of the thought processes of your culture and your mission and your core values to bring the right people onto the team and continue to grow them? The next piece we were just talking about, which is all data-driven decisions. So what's the back-end metrics or numbers or the indicators you need to know in your business, not just revenue in the door, but sales contacts. And then the last piece is the process and systems in each one of those other areas. Are you actually putting things in place to allow yourself as well as others to not make it up and guess every day or try to work off memory? Are you putting things in place to allow your business to have some process to it?
So let's go into vision for a second. So what is the best question when you're just starting out, or even if you're see, I think because with most of your clients that fit perfectly where, in my opinion, you solve massive problems are they're moving and they're doing things and yet it's just kind of a mess. Like
so can I help you right there? You're asking the question.
Absolutely.
You got it. Yeah, so let me just jump right in. So what's the massive part of that vision thing? I'll tell you, what you never have with the entrepreneur, especially the one who's either the creator/sales marketer, this person is never short on creativity or ideas. As a matter of fact, so much so that that's actually the thing that hurts the company the most, if they actually have the maturity to step back and look at it. So the first thing I'm talking to somebody about is, how do we put some simplicity and focus back into this? How do we wipe away all the other things and get you focused back on the core value, or whatever your unique value proposition was for this company that got it started? How do we get you back there and wipe away all the other junk you're focused on, and reset your mind, put a renewing of your mind back? Because most of the time, that's why I've kind of aptly titled the book The Owner's Mindset, because it kind of all goes back there, because it all started to go really well and starts to go really bad, almost on this idea of complexity.
Right. So,
yeah.
I was saying, where do you start then? So, because I think this is like the crux of becoming a entrepreneur. I had a local guy who's just killing it. He's so likable. He started it's a service-based company.
Yep.
Everyone he meets wants to hire his firm. And I saw him at like a basketball game recently, and he looked at me and he was like, "Eddie, I don't even know how you do it. Like, how do I spend time with my kids? How do I exercise? How do I do all the things I love to do?" And I said, well, first of all, you're just in the beginning and you're kind of in a grind. But then I went into some of the stuff you and I talk about a lot, which is you got to develop a team. You got to start thinking about where you want to be and what can you replace yourself with.
And his eyes started to gloss over, right? His eyes went in the back of his head as he's listening to you, because that all sounds super overwhelming, right?
Yeah, and that's a question I was going to ask you. So with all this stuff, it's like it's something the CEO needs to know, but then pushing it out, how do you actually – because one argument I think someone on the listening to this would say is like, well, you guys don't understand, I'm so busy already. So how am I going to, like, organize my company and do this? And it might not be in their skill set, Vinnie.
Well, the funny thing is there are things that definitely are in their skill set. So I just had 2 conversations today, almost akin to some of the stuff we're talking about. And both of these owners would say they were ill-equipped to kind of to change some of these things because they're overwhelmed. And, we hear, like, you go and you get education of some of the core things that a properly or a Jim Collins-esque company should have that looks like a great company. And some of the basics, the very basic things are right within every operator's hands. We just don't put the time or effort into it. And so this morning, a guy's overwhelmed because of his need to have a staff, and he was very discouraged by the turnover rate and people he keeps churning up when he is frustrated by his people. And I said, do you have a mission for the company, and what are your core values? And he was like mad. I'm like, what are you mad about? He's like, I hear this from people. I'm like, well, okay, stop. Let's take a deep breath. Your mission is not about what you should do. Your mission, like that guy at your basketball game, it's a clear indicator to help you say no to the things you shouldn't be doing, so that you know how to stay on point and stay simple instead of chasing 45 ideas. And he's like, well, what about these core values? I said, look in the mirror, look at the few people on your organization that are fit right in line with you. There's a reason. Start writing down the immediate character traits, the values that line up with you guys. Those 4 or 5 things are you. So for us, it's driven, toughness, fairness, kindness. So when I'm interviewing somebody, I'm searching through those 4 or 5 values for reasons to say no to the person. Because we start interviewing somebody, we get all excited because they have some competence, and we lose all clarity and focus on how to interview them for the flags, because we got so excited that they know how to put a Facebook ad up that we forgot that we need to find out if they're even kind. Are they even somebody who fits within our environment? Because we're going to chew them up if it's only based on competence. And that's why I'm saying to you, you don't have to be a professional interviewer to know your subset of core values that exist. Look at the people of you and who are successful there, and start interviewing to say no, not to say yes, and you'll be amazed. Because really, at the end of the day, I say this to my wife, we give benefit of the doubt to the people we line up with because we make the same mistakes they make. And so we always say words like, oh, they get it, or they're just dialed in. Well, they make mistakes too, but we overlook them because they're willing to put in the longer hours. They're tougher. They're, in our world, they're driven. They're kind. They're all these things that I am. And so when I hire someone who core value lines up, then whatever personality or skills they have, they just complement our business. And we all go out and hire because we find this great Facebook ad guy, but he doesn't pass 3, let alone 5 of the core values. And 3 weeks later, we were so excited, and it turned into the wheels fell off, and I don't know what happened to him. Well, nothing happened to him. He might be good in someone's organization, just not yours.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. In fact, one thing you were reminding me of, I was talking to a friend of mine who's in the health business today, supplements and products, and they're doing a really nice run rate at an extraordinarily high net profit compared to other clients I have, and even what we were doing. And the main, and I just made note of this. This was great insight on your part to bring it up. Is that his mission is so clear about what he's providing to his company and his customer, that his customers are going deeper with him, and it's showing up on his bottom line.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. It makes total sense.
I love it too. So with let's just go through a couple quick. I just want to add more value to the listener on what are some of the key numbers that you would look at and rhythm to make sure you're looking out the front window rather than the rear view mirror type thing.
Yeah, so that's good. So depending on what's an important metric to you. So each industry has some different indicators, but I like to have fun and get rid of like margin and those things and talk to some of the obvious stuff, because everybody cares about sales. Right, so you ever have that question when you're like, hey, how did sales go yesterday? And someone says, great. Well, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? Great to what? So,
in fact, if you're asking anybody from sales how sales are going, they're always going to tell you, well, great.
Well, great, sure, they're wonderful. And so, we have to have some measurables. So if it's a sales, let's just pick on a phone sales guy or any sales guy. What do you start measuring? So we call them snapshots at the company, but they're scorecards or KPIs or, whatever you want, those words you hear out there. So in our snapshot, what are we measuring for a sales guy? How many leads came in the door with prospects? How many calls did you make? How many of those calls turn into a follow-up call? And how many of those follow-up calls are in the pipeline as to where they've either converted into a customer or whatever other metric you have in there? And real quickly, as soon as you start measuring that daily and weekly, and you're not guessing, the answer is no longer great, but it's 7. And then, okay, well, 7 means something. 7 might be bad. If I did 10 yesterday, I only did 7 today. I suddenly no longer have an emotional, it went great. I now have a number, and someone can be held accountable as to whether that's a good or a bad thing. And so reducing stuff to a snapshot or a scorecard literally allows you to no longer have this gray, murky discussion. And if you do that in 5 or 6 areas of your business, that like operationally are the core ones, you suddenly no longer really need the P&L. The P&L should be like a confirmation of what's happened over the last 45 days. It should not be an aha for you. It should be like a validation. And so
that's right.
Scorecards help you do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the John Wooden thing of how he never talked about winning. He talked about the fundamentals, and the winning was just a byproduct of the fundamentals, correct?
I'm here, Mr. O'Keefe.
I said it's just, how John Wooden talked about winning's a byproduct of let's get the fundamentals straight. So he spent all the time talking about fundamentals, not the outcome, which your P&L is really just an outcome. And you can't really reverse engineer and go back to it, So Shifting gears again, you're a guy who spends a lot of time with his family. I know you're very conscious about how you're raising your kids. I think you and your wife just celebrated how many years?
20 years. 20 years.
That's pretty awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I
they
think
really should be thankful to her, but for putting up with me for 20 years. But yeah, it's great.
One of the traps I think that we have in our society is this belief system of, like when I hear guys say, well, I need to work, my wife doesn't get it, I need to work this many hours, like 14, 18 hours, and then it'll pay off in the future. I cringe when I hear that. I really get nervous for that person and worry about their operational model of the world, because it's one that leads to, I think, a really, first of all, I would say it leads to a non-rich life, first of all, and a non-rich, and my measurement of my richness starts with my family and my relationship there, what I'm doing at home. So what are your values at home, and how do you perceive some of the things that I just brought up? And I know you have probably some strong opinions.
Yeah. So, I think there's a lesson taught by a lot of people, and the word is balance. I have some major hang-ups with the word, because balance sounds like you're trying to make everything work. And really, the word that our family works off is priority. And what's actually my first priority? If my first priority is my family, then I'm going to run the other aspects of my life through the filter of that priority. Now, there are times when I have to jump on a plane and be somewhere. So my priority of my family doesn't change. It just means I might not be home for dinner. But, like reading the Bible at bed at night, or saying a prayer with my kid, or help coaching them up when they had a bad day, that just happens on the telephone that day because I'm not at the house. But my duties and priorities of being their father hasn't changed. And I think sadly, and I've had to learn some of these lessons on my own, we change our priorities based on what's in front of us, as opposed to having a clear beacon of what's supposed to be our largest priority. And that's a big one for me. And we can talk a lot about a lot of family components, but for me, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a solid one. And I think it's I like how you rephrase that, because balance, I think, is a word that people throw around. And you said it right, man. I mean, I think what we found a lot, too, is that by having focused attention on whatever is important now means that you're saying no. And you've said this a few times in this interview about how your book and your systems helps people say no to a lot of things. And what I found is that people who have conflicted minds and struggle more never say no. And this is outside of business. This is socially, personally, and you see it in entrepreneurship too. But the lack of so it's so easy for me to say no to a lot of things because I know my priorities. So thanks for sharing that. What's the secret of? I'll throw one more at you. My parents just celebrated their 62nd wedding anniversary.
Awesome.
In this day and age with teenagers and young kids, what do you see as like, say, the one or two things that helps keep your marriage strong and your family relationship strong? There
literally is two things, and they build on the exact same as the other. We went into our marriage. Well, we've spent so long. I don't know if it started at the beginning or has just always been a core root of it, but in the mathematical equation of the contract of marriage, literally it can be broken into a mathematical equation. The word happiness is nowhere in there. And I don't mean that you can't be happy in your marriage. That's not a reason to stay in or get out of your marriage. And so because that's like not in there, my wife and I have had to learn how to give each other the benefit of the doubt on a lot of things so that we aren't quick to make emotional decisions based on our own happiness level, and it's a core rock that I would, if I could spend the rest of our time together hammering that point home, I think we'd have a lot more marriages that would be staying together, because they wouldn't be working off some false assumptions that because it didn't work this week, I'm going to tag out, or because because I this isn't what I signed up for. Marriages go through phases and seasons, and so if I wasn't able to develop an ability to give my wife the benefit of the doubt when she's kind of coming down on me for working too hard, then I'm quick to go and start having all these other feelings, and those feelings lead to more feelings, and it starts this compounding effect where after a while all I can say is I'm not happy, but I can't point to any one crowning moment as to why I'm not happy.
Right. You just went down this cycle, and now you're so far down the cycle, you've allowed yourself to just kind of siphon off in a different direction.
Yeah, so I joke and say it's like the little Lego guy. Remember playing with the Lego guy when we were little? And we would stick the little Lego blocks on his head, and we'd stick as many of them on as we could until he fell over. I think marriage is like that. I come home and I didn't do the laundry, and she yells at me and I put a Lego block on my head, or I needed a doctor's appointment scheduled for me and she didn't schedule the doctor's appointment. I put a Lego block on my head, and all these things start adding up. And one day I come home and I didn't cut the lawn in time, and she's like, "Why didn't you cut the lawn?" Well, I erupt because I tipped over, and the lawn wasn't the reason we break up. It just was finally the thing that tipped me over.
Yeah, and this is true beyond marriage too. This is relationship stuff as well. So hey, so I appreciate that. For time's sake, let's just dive really quick into your business is now running some seminars and is doing some training for people who are entrepreneurs, small businesses. You want to just give us a quick, how people can find out?
Yeah, I'll give you a rifle fire.
Doing?
So our core mission in every business we're running is to help small businesses succeed. So Fully Accountable's core mission is to help small businesses succeed by knowing the data of its business, right? So everything we're building is all there. We have launched a summit called the Strategy and Execution Summit. And the core mission of the Strategy and Execution Summit is to help the small business owner have executable items in the 6 areas of its critical areas of its company. I have a small consulting practice, and its core mission is to help small business owners have the proper mindset to grow to the next level. And each one of these wonderfully play nice with each other. It's the reason I've written a book, and it's all back to kind of helping equip somebody with executable action items in the 6 critical areas of their business.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Well, I mean, I'm speaking at your events. I know in the future I'll probably be speaking at them. So if anyone wants to do that, please go over to Strategy and
Execution Summit.com. Yep, you can find us there, and you'll see a lot more about it.
Awesome. Well, dude, I just want to say from a heartfelt space, you've been just a phenomenal friend to me and mentor, and it's been fun watching you do what you do and to see you help so many people. So I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. And is there any last what's one last thing you want to share with everybody? Parting words.
Yeah, it's funny. I get asked the question from time to time, and it always resonates because I like it. What's the one piece of advice you'd give yourself if you were, if you were talking to your younger version of yourself? And I've watched that the differentiator for people is people just give up right before they were about to experience some greatness. So just don't give up. When it looks the worst, don't give up.
Love it. Love it.
Before I let you go today, hopefully you'll love that interview. Please check us out at Ed O'Keefe Show, Behind the Scenes Greatness on Facebook, and let me know what you think. We are posting a lot of amazing stuff. We're doing Facebook Lives every day around 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, and then even in our Facebook group. So if you've bought the book Time Collapsing, make sure you ask for a request to go into our Time Collapsing Academy's private Facebook group, where I do personal training there once or twice a week. sharing what's working behind the scenes. So I'd love to have you there. And then one other final reminder, Time Collapsing Mega Conference in October in Nashville. I want you there. There's very rare opportunities in life that you get to leapfrog to the top by being around world-class instructors, and actually more importantly, real-world entrepreneurs who are in the trenches on a daily basis. So come on out there. I promise I'll give you a hug if you want a hug. I'll give you a high five if you want a high five. You will be right there up front center with the rest of us. This is not one of those mega conferences where you don't get to see the speakers, get to shake hands, get to ask questions. Trust me, we will make it very, very intimate, and you will walk out of there with a roadmap to accelerate your business and your entrepreneurial career. That's it. This is Ed O'Keefe. It's been fun. I hope you're awesome, and I will talk to you next time.
And thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode as well as all the other podcast episodes by heading on over to edokeefeshow.com. If you would, please go subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and leave a rating and review. Rating and reviews truly are the best way for you to show your appreciation for the show because they help more people find out about the podcast and decide if this is the one for them. So until next week, it's time for you to go out there, take action, and inspire.
Hey everybody, it's Ed O'Keefe, and thanks for watching that video. Hi. We're sitting here at Target. My team needed a quick video to say thank you and invite you to our mega conference, which there should be a link right above me or to the side of me or over here, or subscribe. I don't know, whatever else we put up there. If you haven't gotten the free book yet, Time Collapsing. Keeg, stop it. Please do that now. So check it out. You can be busy. You can have a family. You can be asked to do crazy things and be successful on your own terms, like we're doing it here at Time Collapsing Academy, at Time Collapsing, and then how we do it with our supplement businesses and our mentoring programs. So be yourself, be awesome, and I'll see you at hopefully a live event, because that's where all the beauty and magic happens. That's it. Peace.